Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Tennessee Fats and I'm coming to the library today because I read a new comic book yesterday that actually had me so excited. I said, this deserves its own video. I literally had to get up, run around my desk a couple times just to calm down. And then I said, okay, Tennessee Fats, tomorrow, shoot something about this. Okay, all right. Now, for those of you who are looking at all the stuff that's behind me here, you're probably already saying, well, what could this guy possibly be talking about? He's got so much. No. For those of you who have watched my videos before though, you probably already know exactly what I'm talking about. Oh yeah. Let's just bring this up here, shall we? That's right. Titan Comics, issue 0. This is their time with the title. Oh boy, let's get into this. All right. Now let's go with some history here. Let's start with the Wayback Machine. The Wayback Machine. For those of you who don't know Conan and who don't know Robert E. Howard, well, you really should. You should honestly spend some time doing some research here and looking into this because it's worth your time. There have been enough blockbuster movies about this character that I think it kind of warrants some attention. I'll just say that and set that aside. What happened historically with the actual licensing comic companies is that this one's gone around a while, okay? It's been out there for a bit. It went from Marvel, then it went to Dark Horse, then it went back to Marvel, and then with very little fanfare and notice, Marvel lost a license. It was gone. And then we all found out that it was going to a company called Titan. Now, Titan Comics, it's not one that I will freely admit, I did not know Titan Comics off the top of my head. I said, what? I had to spend some time digging on this one. And they are a legit comic company. And quite frankly put, when you look at the product, you're going to understand, yes, they've proven it. They're a legit publisher. We'll give it to them. So they got their hands on this. And this is going to be the first time that Conan's handled by somebody that's really not one of the big mainstream publishers, which is very cool because now you have the opportunity to say, this is a totally different take on it, a totally different way to look at it, a totally new beginning. None of this organizational malaise that's sitting behind it. It's literally, let's start from scratch. And honestly, I think Titan did a great job with this one. Here's why. Okay, so listen. When you start with a character that's got the kind of history and the canonical mythos that Conan has, or pretty much any Robert E. Howard character has, you kind of have to say to yourself, what am I going to do with this? This is a really difficult position for any publishing company to be in, let alone one that's relatively new to publishing comics in the mainstream. This is not going to be easy. You have a couple different choices you can make. And off the top of my head, I can think of 3 of them, okay? The first one is you say to yourself, hey, I'm going to go the reboot. New character, brand new, right off the bat. We're starting from scratch. You know what? All that canonical stuff, it's gone. We're going to basically be recreating this with our tastes and our spin on this. And you know what? We're going to update it. And it's going to be cool. And it's going to be marketed directly to the market that we want to go down. Okay. All right. That's it. That's it. That is legitimately a tack. And you know, we've seen major comic production companies do that many a time. And I know as a comic book buyer and reader, you got to step back and say to yourself, are we seriously doing this again? Yeah, I think the public is a little tired of that one, but it is still a tack, and it is a tack that will work. Typically, it'll work for the short to medium term if you do it right. Number 1. Number 2, here's option number 2. You say to yourself, okay, well, this character has all this mythos. They have all the canon. Why don't we just continue? Why not? Pick up where the other publishing companies left off. Well, it's a route, okay, legit. Going that route is going to be a tough one because what you're basically assuming in that is you're saying, comic book reader, I have assumed that by picking up my issue number 1, that you have read everything that comes before. Now listen, we all love Conan if we're watching this channel, okay? But at the end of the day, saying to yourself, I'm going to assume that every single Johnny Q public has read all of this, that's a stretch. I mean, listen, I'm doing my best to get the content out to you guys by videos that I'm doing here, but I know for a fact, average person, Conan, what, the guy with the sword? Yeah, that's pretty much the only response you're gonna get. Okay, but then there's a middle ground, okay? This is tack number 3. Tack number 3 is you say to yourself, okay, I recognize we have all this mythos, and I don't want to take this and throw it all out and do something that's, you know, just a reboot. So I'm gonna go the middle route. And I think the middle route, honestly, it is the more difficult route. Creating it all from scratch, well, you're just throwing everything in the wind, you can do whatever you want. Taking the original stuff and continuing it, well, you gotta know all the original stuff, but guess what? You can just continue along, make it your own. Going the middle route, however, that's the hard one. That is really the tricky part where you say to yourself, I'm going to acknowledge what was originally there, and I'm going to recreate that, and I'm going to put my spin on it. And I believe that is what Titan has done here. Now, here's how it's slightly different. And hold on. Well, let's just get into that. Okay, all right. So here's what we did a little differently in this book. And this is one of the things that I think is probably going to make this do really, really well. And it's one of the reasons why I would say, if you haven't picked this up, even though it's a free comic book day book, find it. You don't desperately have to have it, but find it, okay? There's a couple of things that you could have done with this. And I think Titan made the right choices. Number one, they were really acknowledging that whole mythos. Remember I talked about option number 2 earlier, and the fact that you've got all this mythos and you've got all this organizational behavioral history of Conan and the companies that produced it and all that sort of stuff. Well, you have all that. You could ignore it completely, but they didn't. And the way that they didn't was they chose an art style that specifically speaks to Conan, okay? Now, Conan, when he came out, originally was done by Barry Windsor Smith at Marvel Comics. So obviously, there were your underground Mexican comics that I believe that came out before that. But Barry Windsor Smith, Marvel Comics, that's really where it started. And the art style there, meticulously clean. And don't get me wrong, I love Barry Windsor Smith Conan. You guys have heard me talk about this on the channel many, many a time. But when I grew up, my generation grew up reading Conan, we were reading the Buscema era. We were reading the Ernie Chan era. That's the era of Conan that we know. And that Conan was physically a beast. Like, we're talking, like, okay, let me just try to put it to you this way. When I look at Arnold Schwarzenegger in Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer, he's too damn small. Yeah, let that sentence sink in. When you read those original Conan comics, guy's arm, now don't get me wrong, Arnold Schwarzenegger is huge, okay? Guy's arm is like horse head size. It's huge. His neck isn't a neck. It's a tree trunk. It's his torso. Like, when you see the way he's drawn next to people that are the other warriors of his age, he dwarfs them. And he doesn't dwarf them in height. He physically dwarfs them in just raw mass. The guy was a beast. One of the viewers of this channel a little while ago, actually, I think in the last week, said that, one of the best Conans was when he finished that whole Beyond the Black River thing. He was an absolute, and the word beast came up there. And I think he nailed it with that phrase, beast. Well, when Titan drew this, when they chose the artist for this, clearly they were going for that Ernie Chan, Buscema, beast mode Conan. And this is the guy that's out there just being ridiculously huge. This is the gritty Conan. And that style of art speaks to you as a reader. It speaks to me as a reader. It speaks to people that are going to be picking this up from scratch, because they're going to be getting the Conan model that really isn't the, early, skinny, sort of young adventurer Conan. Even though this story, and this is a point I'm going to get to in a second, does take place in the early adventuring days. You've got that beast mode. You've got that art that goes with that. And the surrounding art that goes with that as well says the same thing. So yes, you're starting something from scratch, but you're acknowledging the history that came before it. And that, I think, is a huge point. And I believe that's going to be a huge selling point for Titan on this title going forward. I hope they stick with it. I really do. Because this stuff just, when you turn the page, jumps. And you're like, holy crap. So Titan, well done on that particular aspect of this. But let's talk about part 2 as to why I think this will do well. Okay, so listen, here's the facts. You've knocked it out of the park by doing the art style the way you did. That's just what it is. Let's talk about the W word, shall we? Writing, okay? In a free comic book day book, typically what you get is maybe, 10, 12 pages of new material, and then the rest is a reprint on the back, because the idea is it's just supposed to really pique your interest, so you'll continue to buy this for the rest of the year until the next free comic book day. Well, Titan did something different on this one. They basically included an entire story within this comic. So yeah, that was a good choice. Well done. What it does is it gives you the opportunity to add more writing to that. So when you're doing an issue 0, where you're doing a big build-up, and this is our big launch that's going to be happening in July, maybe you want to throw a lot in there. Well, did Titan do that? No, they didn't. But you know what? Wow. Well done to Titan on this one. With very little words, very few words in here, by pairing this art style that they've chosen with a little bit of writing and framing and the actual story as it progresses, you get a sense of a very deep level of thought behind Conan. And this is not something that you typically see in the Conan comics until you're well past, in the original Marvel era, you're well past the death of Bellet, and he's out into his really gritty beast mode stage. This is where you're starting to get a sense of, wow, there's a lot to this guy. Titan's doing it up front here in issue 0. So you're starting off early adventuring Conan with depth. Like, this is still waters kind of depth. Like, here's the still waters on the surface and all this material is down here below just bubbling away. This was, wow, like, wow. So writing wise, you've taken the art style, you've added a writer to it that actually matches the art style, and you got it. You knew the character. So Titan, well done on this one. Let's close this one up and I'll give you my final thoughts as to what I think is going to happen going forward. All right, here's what I think we're going to see going forward on this one. And I hope this is what happens. I'm hoping that Titan will keep this creative team in here for at least a good period of time as one succinct unit. I think they really knocked this out of the park for issue 0. Okay, this was really well done for what's expected to be is just a notional Free Comic Book Day book. It caught my attention, it's held me to it, and as a guy who's been reading Conan comics for over 30 years, I can tell you, that's not an easy thing to do. The character's been done, it really has, but now I'm excited about what we're going to see going forward. So my hope is that we see this team going forward. Now, in this book, and I will say this, we saw vignettes of a future that Conan has not lived in. But if you've read any of the Robert E. Howard stories, and that includes the comics, and even watched some of the battle royales we've done here on this channel, you know there are certain canonical things that Titan should be running into. I'm thinking we're going to see those. I'm hoping we're going to see a chronological life of Conan, and then bip, Robert E. Howard story, bip, Robert E. Howard story, bip, Robert E. Howard story. This is what I'm hoping we see happen going forward. Titan, if you're watching this, by all means, if you don't think that's the right route to go, listen, you're the comic company. I'm just the Conan guy who's reading this stuff. Feel free to do whatever you want. But my hope is that's what we're going to see. So everybody, I hope you enjoyed this video. I really don't want to add too much more to this because I know if I do, I'm going to spoil it. Get out there and buy it if you have to pay for it. Get out there and find it if you can get it for free. And by all means, enjoy reading this one as a comic. Read it. Everybody, have a great day. We'll see you in the next video.